welcome and thanks for participating in my professional development. The title for today is The Mind is in Bloom, and Bloom should be familiar because we're going to be talking about Bloom's taxonomy. So today's learning target by the end of this professional development, you will be able to use questioning resources to effectively increase students' cognitive level and level of thinking, and you will be able to define and develop questions that you can actually utilize in your classrooms. Success criteria, teachers will be able to include one resource in a future lesson, and teachers will create lesson-specific higher order questions for an upcoming lesson. So why should we talk about questioning? There's a number of things that I looked at relating to questioning and why it's needed in our classrooms. The pre-survey I gave you guys, you identified using questioning and these jigsaw cubes as an area that you would want to see actually utilized in your classes. Past CSA data identifies that our students struggle with inferring a lot, and making inferences in passages is a skill that they need for the SOL. And then current study guides in use, looking at study guides that we used first 9 weeks, the students struggle with those higher order thinking questions. And then our CLT notes, we talk about every week in our CLT that students need and have problems with these higher order things like inference. And then this is a quote I found kind of eye-opening. It suggested that teachers spend up to 50% of class time questioning, and that they ask between 300 and 400 questions a day, while each student asks on average one question a week. And so just take a second and reflect on your own classroom. Do you think this quote is actually relevant?
Yes.
All right, so before we start to go over Blooms, I have a sorting activity for you. So in the baggie is 3 different things. First is what level of Blooms is it? Next is a definition, so matching what level of Blooms with the definition of that level. And then the third thing is the verbs. What verbs would be used in that level? So see if you remember your Blooms. When's the last time you actually had a look at a Bloom's chart?
It's been a while.
There's 3. There should be 3 columns. The level of Blooms, a definition of it, and then verbs that you would use in that level.
Working on it.
Does that make sense? Okay. Think you got it?
Maybe. We'll see.
You good? Okay. You can check your answers. Most of them? All right. So to review, this is what the worksheet that I just gave you. You guys can actually keep. But to review Bloom's, so the lowest level is going to be remembering, and these are just recalling information. The student should be able to just easily rattle off answers. Some example questions would be, what is this? Or simply the definition, defining words. Next, we have understanding, so can they actually explain the ideas or concepts? This might be a little more challenging, but not very much. Things like summarizing what they just read, or explaining something. Then, these are higher level from here on up. Applying, can they use the information that they already know and apply it to a new situation? And verbs would be like solving, demonstrating, interpreting. Next is analyzing. So can they draw connections between ideas? So verbs with this could be comparing and contrasting. Then we have evaluating. So can they justify or take a position on a topic and actually defend their answer why they chose that position? And then the top order is, can they create? So can they produce new or original work based on all the information that they already know? So lower level versus higher level. Lower level are the bottom two, remembering and analyzing. Again, the questions are going to, or the answers are going to be very objective and fact-based, closed, direct, and discrete knowledge. So you're going to use these types of questions when reviewing or summarizing information. Examples, where is, who is, can you list? Okay, these questions are good to incorporate with higher level just so that the students feel comfortable, like they're successful at answering these questions. They might be willing to try some higher order thinking questions. Some higher order questions are the top four in the pyramid. So applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. They're subjective, so the students can explain or defend their answers. They're open-ended, open to interpretation, evaluative, inquiry, inferential, and synthesis. And again, going back to that SOL and the standard our students struggle with is making inferences a lot. So higher order questions encourage students to think more deeply about a topic or subject, to make connections, and to construct meaning. Some examples would be, what would happen if, what can you infer, and can you compare? So how do you prepare students? You can't just go out and say, we're going to create higher order thinking questions today. They're going to have no idea what you're talking about. So first, you need to create a classroom environment that fosters questioning and makes them feel safe and comfortable to answer higher order thinking questions, but also create those higher order thinking questions. Have direct instruction on how to formulate the questions. You can't just say, go ahead and create 3 questions. We know based off of past experiences that they're probably just going to create those simple yes and no questions. So how to get them to think more critically. Allow additional think and wait time. When you ask questions, allow students an opportunity to think. Some might think of their answer quicker than others, so don't just call on the first person that's ready. Let all the students think about their answer, maybe jot down their answer on a piece of paper, and elaborate on why they believe that to be the correct answer. Turn and talk is good, and I know a lot of us already do this, but turning and talking when we have higher order questions, so that students feel comfortable with their answer before sharing it out loud. And then teaching the question-answer relationship. And this is a discrete skill that is in our curriculum, so making sure our students understand what answer they're looking for when they see a question. All right. What I did was create activities for an introduction, a during, and an after, so that you can use questioning throughout your whole entire lesson. So the first thing or activity I used was for these cubes. So I think everybody in here starts with a daily journal. So when the students come in, they could get their journal and you could have the cubes out and they could get cubes. You can have them share with a pair or a partner or just by themselves. So instead of asking a question and they write the answer, you would do it in reverse. Put a passage on the board. They would use the cubes and they have to come up with whatever, one question, 3 questions. You could have them come up with one and then answer their own question, okay, or somebody else's. Or they could also use the cubes. You could just put the topic on the board and they could create questions for a discussion that you could have during the lesson. So, on your piece of paper, I'm going to put, so this is going to relate to our curriculum, what we're going to do this next 9 weeks, and it's talk about Homer and the Odyssey. So using this journal on the board, create 1 or 2 questions for this journal. Okay? So go ahead and read through it and then just roll your dice and see what you get. Try and think higher order questions. Let's try. All right. You've all read through it. So my first one, I would say, how would, and so how would you feel if you were one of Penelope's suitors? All right. What do you got?
I got why would. So why would Penelope not want to marry one of these suitors?
That's good. Why would Penelope not want to marry them? What did you get, Mr. Horn? You did?
When is, let's see, say when does this take place?
Okay, when does this take place?
I got who might be affected by all of these suitors.
Okay, good. Who might be affected by Penelope's suitors? All right, is this a resource you might use? All right, practice and during activities. So using the text we're going to read, okay, go ahead and just look at book 1 for the Odyssey. And here are question stems broken down by skill. So you could take these question stems and apply it to anything you're doing for that day. So there's reading word analysis, so we do the root words a lot, so there's question stems that would go along with that, and figurative language, which are both skills that our students struggle with. Going beyond just defining figurative language, they would actually have to find examples of and explain why. If you flip it, reading, here's question stems for reading fiction questions broken down by skills. So what do you want them to look for that day? You could just pull question stems from here and incorporate them in your lesson or your study guide, or just simple questions to ask them. Reading by nonfiction, we know they struggle with author's purpose. So you could pull more questions from this stem versus others based on what you know they need. And then last is writing. So writing question stems, when we're working on our essay, you could use these question stems. So the jigsaw questions by skill, here's the worksheet for by skill. My idea is that you would give the students either the text you're reading for the day or a cold text. So today we're going to use what we're actually reading. You would use that article and have them read it in a pair or a group, and each group would get a different skill to focus on. So read through the passage, focus on this skill, and the students would create questions. Then after 5 or 10 minutes they have their questions, you're going to have them rotate just their questions. So then the next group is going to answer questions based on author's purpose. Okay? Then rotate again. Then the next group is going to get a different skill that they would need to answer questions on. Does that make sense? So you would take this and just cut it up so that the students can have the question stems to make their questioning easier. The turn and teach, so it is backed by research that if students are actually teaching and working through problems and talking to their classmates, that they're going to learn it more. So taking a topic, giving them the question stems, and they have to teach their partner why their question is correct and defend their answer. So going up to the higher order questions, they would be able to really analyze their answers and teach it to their neighbor. I linked this in here, question stems by level, so we have by skill, but then also by level. So this is something that you could create just with some colored paper. Each question has a different, or each level has a different color. Okay, so then you would take the question stems and print them on different colored paper. So knowledge is red. So this one page you would print on red and cut these up. The next one, comprehension, you would put on a different color, and so forth all the way through the pyramid. So once you have all these created, if you want to pull higher order questions, you can just pull that color.